You're old. You don't need these things anymore. We'll put them to better use." That was the first thing Tiffany said as she and Kevin dragged a rented truck into my driveway. My own son, my only son, stood behind her, silent, letting her words hang like a knife in the air. I froze in the kitchen doorway, watching as my daughter-in-law's manicured fingers tapped on her phone while two men carried away my television. The living room I had scrubbed and polished for decades was being gutted in front of me. Tiffany didn't look at me, but her voice was sharp enough to slice through my chest. "Kevin, take that lamp too. It'll look better in the new condo." I clutched the edge of the doorframe. That lamp wasn't just glass and metal. It was the last birthday gift my late husband had saved up for, back when we had nothing but love and borrowed chairs. And now, it was being tossed into the back of a truck like a piece of junk. Before I tell you how I ended up standing there, watching my life stolen piece by piece, I need you to understand where I came from. Because betrayal doesn't cut this deep unless it slices through decades of sacrifice. I was 23 when fate made me a widow. Kevin was barely 2, still clinging to me with chubby fists, when the accident took his father away. People told me to remarry, to find someone who could give me stability, but I refused. Every proposal, every quiet hint from neighbors, I turned them all down. My life wasn't mine anymore. It belonged to the small boy with big brown eyes who needed me more than anything. So I worked. I sewed dresses until my fingertips cracked and bled. My hands became maps of scars, each line etched by a needle pulled at midnight. I pawned my wedding ring to pay for Kevin's medicine, sold my gold earrings to cover school fees. Even the old watch my husband had given me on our 5th anniversary ended up in a dusty pawnshop window. Every piece of me, every token of love, was turned into tuition, rent, and food. Some nights, I would collapse on the sewing table, cheek pressed against fabric scraps. Kevin would tug at my sleeve and whisper, "Mama, are you okay?" And I would smile, even though my body screamed for rest. Because a mother doesn't show weakness when her child's entire world depends on her strength. For years, that was my rhythm, sacrifice in silence. Until Kevin grew into a tall young man, accepted into engineering school. I cried the day he walked across that graduation stage. I thought finally, all those years of hunger, of hiding overdue bills, of pushing away loneliness, they had built something. He would have a future better than mine. I thought my devotion had earned me security in his love. I was wrong. When Kevin first brought Tiffany home, I knew something was off. She smiled sweetly for him, but her eyes, those sharp, assessing eyes, sliced right through me. She shook my hand, barely touching my fingers, then pulled out a tissue and wiped her palm like I was diseased. "Sorry," she said in that honey-coated voice. "I have sensitive skin." She glanced around my modest living room, her lips curving into a polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. "It's quaint. Though honestly, Kevin, don't you think your mother would be more comfortable in a retirement community? Somewhere with better amenities?" She didn't drink the coffee I poured. "Do you have organic green tea instead?" "No." "Oh, it's fine. I'll just wait." Her words were daggers, disguised as small talk. I felt the first crack form inside me that day. Still, I convinced myself she was just nervous, that love might soften her, that Kevin would never allow anyone to treat me with less than respect. But Tiffany was patient. Her cruelty came in whispers, in seeds planted carefully into Kevin's ear. "She's clinging to you too much, Kevin. Don't you see? It's emotional blackmail." You can't build a marriage with me while she's always around, needing something. She's a burden, Kevin, and one day she'll drag us down with her." Each sentence was a thread, and little by little, Tiffany wove a wall between us. One evening, Tiffany came alone. Kevin was busy at work, she said, stepping inside with the confidence of someone who believed the house already belonged to her. She didn't sit. She stood in my kitchen, arms crossed, designer bag dangling from her wrist like a weapon. "Eleanor, I'll be honest with you," she began, her voice sweet as poison. "You've had your life. You chose your path. Kevin is mine now. And if you truly love him, you'll step back and let him live. Don't shackle him with guilt anymore." Her words struck harder than any physical blow. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. "And another thing," she added, eyes narrowing. "Stop pretending you're not a burden, because you are, and you know it." I wanted to scream, to throw her out, to remind her that I was the reason Kevin could afford the life she now enjoyed. But the years of silence, of swallowing my pain, pressed my tongue down. That night, I sat alone at the sewing table, the same spot where I had once dreamed of Kevin's bright future. My hands trembled as I stitched, and for the first time, I wondered if Tiffany was right. Was I a burden? But I didn't have long to reflect, because not even a week later, the truck came. Kevin didn't meet my eyes as men carried away the television, the refrigerator, even the framed photos of his father. Tiffany directed the operation with a satisfied smile, her voice sharp with authority. "You won't need these anymore, Eleanor. We'll take good care of them." I wanted to scream, but all that came out was a whisper. "These are mine." Kevin finally looked at me then, but his eyes were cold. "You've lived your life, Mom. Now it's our turn." And just like that, my world collapsed. As the last piece of furniture was loaded, I stood in the hollow silence of an empty house. The walls echoed with absence. It was as if I had just attended my own funeral. But that wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of the storm. If you were standing in my shoes at that moment, watching your child strip away everything you'd built, what would you have done? Would you fight? Would you beg? Or would you stay silent, waiting for the world to show you who truly stood by your side? Before I reveal what happened next, let me say this. Before we dive deeper into this dramatic story, make sure to subscribe to Tangled Heart Stories and turn on the notification bell. Here, you'll always find tales of sacrifice, betrayal, and unexpected twists. And tell me, where are you watching from? Drop a comment below. Maybe the next story will echo your own experience. The first time Tiffany told me I was useless, she did it with a smile. She had this way of curling her lip just so, the way you do when you're tasting wine and pretending it's better than it is. We were sitting at my kitchen table, back when I still had one, and she accidentally left the pamphlet folded between us. On the cover, a sun-splashed senior community, silver-haired couples laughing beside a fake lake. "I toured it for you," she said lightly, as if she were offering me chocolate. "They have chair yoga, hydration stations, clean air. You'll love it." "I have my home," I said, "my work." Her gaze flicked to my hands, the needle pricks and crooked fingers. "Work? Eleanor, you're exhausted. Why keep a big old house? Why cling to things?" She reached over and straightened the edge of the pamphlet. "Kevin and I can breathe easier if we know you're safe." Safe. Such a gentle word for what she really meant. Gone. When Kevin came by later, he parroted the script so precisely I could almost hear Tiffany whispering from behind a curtain. "Mom, you deserve a break. You've lived your life. Now it's our turn." That line again. Now it's our turn. Like a key turning in a lock and shutting me out. I wish I could tell you I pushed back with fire, that I slammed the pamphlet in the trash and told them to leave. But grief has a way of bending a person, and years of swallowing humiliation had taught my body to fold in on itself. I said I would think about it. I cut the pamphlet into pieces after they left and flushed them down the toilet, one dissolving square at a time. From that day, Tiffany's kindness sharpened. She brought me low-sodium soups and left them on the porch like charity. She texted Kevin updates on my declining stamina, standing in the doorway and timing how long it took me to reach the mailbox. She was building a case, brick by brick. "You're pale, Eleanor," she cooed one afternoon, the words honey soft, the eyes stone hard. "We worry about you. We just want what's best." What's best? For whom? I started noticing other things too, small, but not small. Kevin's calls moved later and later into the evening, just as I was nodding off. If I didn't answer, Tiffany would text, "He's sleeping now. We'll call when we can." When I did answer, the speakerphone clicked once, then twice, and Tiffany's voice hovered somewhere out of frame. "Hi, Eleanor. Too loud, too cheerful. Tell us if you need anything. That isn't too heavy." Then came the conversation about my things. It didn't happen all at once. It never does. First it was, "Mom, the fridge is too big for you alone." Then, "Those paintings. Dad would want them to stay in the family." A week later, "The TV's better off with us. You hardly watch anything." And when I reached for a reason, for a thread to pull the conversation back to sanity, Kevin smiled sadly, as if I were a child hoarding toys. "We'll take good care of them. If you've ever been talked out of your own reality, you know that dizzy feeling, the ground under you tilting until up is down. You start to wonder if you are the problem, if you are unreasonable, if love now requires you to hand over the last pieces of your life and say thank you." I tried telling Carol, my neighbor, the kind of woman who always had an extra cup of sugar and a story that made you feel less alone. She had seen the truck that day. She'd heard Tiffany laugh when one of the movers almost knocked into the picture of my late husband. After the truck rolled away, Carol stood in my doorway and stared at the blank spaces where my life had been. "Sugar," she said softly. "Who raised that boy?" "I did," I whispered. She took my hands. "Then you still know how to raise him. Maybe not as a child, but as a man. A man needs a boundary to lean against." I nodded, but inside, I felt hollowed out. Boundaries are doors you hold shut from the inside. I felt like someone had already removed the hinges. Tiffany didn't stop. She got clever. She started using "we" like a weapon. "We think a studio would be cozy for you. We feel like your neighborhood is too loud. We can sell the house and manage the money, so you don't worry." And then, the first time she said the quiet part out loud, she brushed invisible crumbs from my countertop and smiled. "You're useless now, Eleanor. Let Kevin carry things forward." There are words you never forget. Not because they're true, but because they're so violently wrong that your soul throws up a flare. For a second, I saw Tiffany as she was. A climber who wanted the mountain more than the man. A pretty wreath wrapped around the choke of control. "Get out," I said. Her eyebrows fluttered. "Excuse me? Get out of my home." She didn't move. She slid her phone out and tapped the screen. A car pulled up before the screen door finished banging. As she left, she leaned close, perfume thick and sweet. "Sooner or later, you'll be the one asking to leave." After the truck came and went, I tried to live in the empty shape that remained. That first night, the house sounded like a boat taking on water. Every creak was louder, every draft colder. Without a refrigerator, I became a traveler in my own kitchen. buying milk by the pint and throwing away what soured. Without the television, evenings stretched long and thin, a ribbon that wouldn't cut, work frayed. My stitches drifted. Women who had trusted my hands for years watched me miss buttonholes and misjudge hems. "It's not like you," one of them said gently. "Are you sure you're okay?" I wanted to tell her that okayness is a muscle, and mine had been overworked and torn. When I called Kevin, humiliation burning my throat like cheap whiskey, Tiffany picked up his phone. "He's resting," she said. "He's had a hard week. We all have. I need to talk to my son." "You need to learn to stand on your own," she replied, voice dropping the sugar. "For his sake." "We stand together in a family," I said. "We don't." The line clicked dead. To the women watching this who have heard a click mid-sentence, who've been told to be grateful for crumbs from a table they built, hear me. You are not alone. If you've ever been the next Sunday, I had the knock. He stood on the porch in a jacket I'd altered for his first job interview. He looked older than his 29 years, but not from grief. Grief softens. "This was hardening, the set of a jaw that refused to mom," he said, not quite meeting my eyes. "I brought you a space heater, until we figure thin things," I asked. "Like how to refill a house you emptied." He shifted. Tiff says, I repeated, and the repetition tasted like iron. "Does Kevin say anything?" His mouth opened, closed. "We're doing what's best for everyone." "For everyone," I said, and I heard the quiet in my voice, a lake in winter. "Tell me, Kevin, what did your father teach you about everyone?" He looked at the floorboards. A sliver of memory moved through his face. A younger him, knees dirty from soccer, his father's hands guiding his. "You protect the smallest one on the field. You remember who fed you." It flickered and went out. "I have to go," he said. When he left, I sat in the hallway and watched the door breathe with the drafts. My body wanted to curl around itself like a leaf. Instead, I straightened. I pulled out my old tin box, the one with the little things I'd kept even when I sold big ones. 2 movie stubs from the year we were happy, a grocery receipt from a day Kevin and I splurged on fresh berries, 3 photographs, edges soft with touching. I needed proof that I had once been loved in this house. I needed fuel. That week I drew a line. It wasn't dramatic. Drama requires an audience. I stopped answering calls after 10. I stopped apologizing when I needed help lifting a bolt of fabric. I stopped pretending that kindness and acquiescence were the same thing. Tiffany noticed. She arrived unannounced, as always, breezing past me with a bouquet she didn't bother to unwrap. "We're listing the house," she said, tossing a manila folder onto the bare counter. The folder fanned open. Printouts, comps, a typed power of attorney form with Kevin's name highlighted. "It's easier this way." "No stress." I slid the papers back into the folder and closed it. "No." Her smile was almost tender. "You signed plenty of papers in your life, Eleanor. Marriage license, mortgage, birth certificate. This is just another signature." "It's my last red line," I said. "And you don't cross it." Her face cooled. "You're being difficult." "I'm being a mother," I said, maybe for the first time in a long time. She leaned in so close I could count the layers of mascara. "Kevin will choose me," she whispered. "He already has." I didn't flinch. "Then he can be a man with his choice." She drew back, and for a moment, the pretty mask slid. There it was, the raw hunger. "Enjoy your empty house," she hissed. "It suits you." When the door slammed, the quiet throbbed. I walked to the window and watched her car disappear down the block, taillights blinking like a dare. I exhaled and felt something new move through me. Not victory, not yet, but the muscle memory of a woman who once held her own life with both hands. 2 mornings later, a white envelope slipped through the mail slot and landed on the floor with a soft slap. No return address on the front, just my name in a hand I didn't recognize. Firm, careful, old-fashioned. On the back, an embossed seal I hadn't seen in years. Davis and Cole, attorneys at law. I held it a long moment, the paper warm from my palms. Sometimes hope arrives dressed like paperwork. Sometimes rescue begins with a single deliberate fold. If you were me, would you open it right there on the hallway rug, heart in your mouth? Or would you make tea, sit by the window, and let the sun touch your face before you learn whether the world has finally decided to be kind? Tell me in the comments, because the answer says more about who we are than any villain's grin. The day the truck came back, it wasn't the men with uniforms who made me shake. It was the neighbors' voices, carrying through the open windows like arrows. Kevin and Tiffany are moving her out piece by piece, one said. Can you believe your own child would do that? Another whispered. I stood in the hallway as the movers hauled away the last reminders of a life built from sacrifice. The refrigerator groaned as they tilted it through the doorway. The framed photograph of my husband's graduation from night school disappeared under a blanket. And when they lifted the cedar chest that held my wedding dress, I felt my knees buckle. I caught Kevin's sleeve. Please, not that. It's all I have left of him. For a moment, just a moment, my son's face softened. Then Tiffany's hand landed on his shoulder, and he repeated her words like a script. Mom, you've had your life. It's our turn now. I let go. The chest vanished into the truck, and with it, the last illusion that love was stronger than manipulation. The house became a skeleton. I cooked on a hot plate, slept on a mattress without a frame, stitched fabric by the glow of a single lamp. Even my clients dwindled. They didn't trust the shaky hands that once held perfection in every seam. Nights stretched long. My mind replayed Tiffany's words, slicing deeper each time. You're useless now. He belongs to me. Sometimes I whispered them aloud, testing the taste of poison, and sometimes I almost believed them. Then came the envelope. I found it one morning on the floor near the door, slid through the slot without ceremony. White, heavy stock, my name written in a script I hadn't seen in half a century. I held it with trembling fingers. Arthur Sterling. The name burned through me. My first love, the boy who used to walk me home under the elm trees, who once promised me Paris in a letter scribbled on notebook paper. We had lost each other when life took me into widowhood, into survival. I hadn't said his name aloud in 50 years. Inside, the letter was simple. I've searched for you. I saw a photograph at the community exhibit. Your smile hasn't changed. I am free now, Eleanor. I would like to see you. If your answer is yes, meet me at the Fairmont Hotel on Sunday at noon. I pressed the page to my lips, half afraid it would dissolve. Was it madness to hope again? To believe there could be a door out of the pit Tiffany had pushed me into? Sunday came. I stood in front of the mirror, the few dresses I still owned hanging loose from the hanger. I had no jewelry, no proper shoes. Carol, my neighbor, saw me pacing and disappeared into her house. She returned with a box, a pearl brooch, a pair of low heels, a scarf that still carried the faintest perfume of youth. You wear these, she said, fastening the brooch to my collar. And remember, girl, no one can strip the dignity you decide to keep. The hotel lobby glistened like another world. Marble floors, chandeliers dripping light. I stepped through, clutching my handbag, and a man in a suit frowned at me. Ma'am, Deliveries are through the side entrance. For a moment, shame rushed in. But then I heard my name. Eleanor. Arthur stood at the staircase, silver hair catching the light. A smile that still knew me. He crossed the lobby, ignoring the stairs, and took my scarred hands in both of his. You look exactly as I remembered. No one mistook me for staff again. That night, over dinner, he told me of his life, success in business, a marriage that had ended with loss, years of searching for something he thought he'd never find. He had found me instead, through a photograph Carol had submitted to the exhibit. Me, sewing in the doorway, sunlight across my face. I don't want to waste another day, he said. If you'll let me, I want to give you the comfort you deserve. Not charity, a home, a partner. I thought of Kevin, of Tiffany, of the hollow house and the truck full of ghosts. I thought of the girl I had once been, the one who believed in Paris. And for the first time in decades, I said yes. To the women watching this, have you ever been pushed so far into a corner you thought you'd never climb out, only to find that life still had a hand stretched toward you? If you were me, standing there in that hotel lobby, would you have taken Arthur's hand? Or turned back into the emptiness you knew? Tell me below. Your answer may be the very one another woman needs tonight. When Arthur asked me to move in with him, I hesitated. Not because I didn't want to, but because shame still clung to me like a second skin. Could I really step into chandeliers and crystal goblets after eating soup from dented pots? Could I carry my scarred hands into a world of polished silver? Arthur silenced those doubts with a single sentence. Dignity isn't something you buy, Eleanor. It's something you take back. So I did. The first week in Arthur's home felt like walking into a dream I didn't think belonged to me. Tall windows, velvet drapes, a garden that glowed at dusk. But the real miracle wasn't the luxury. It was the way he treated me, as though every word I spoke mattered. As though my scars were proof of battles survived, not stains to be hidden. And with every passing day, I felt my spine straighten. The Eleanor who had once sewn until dawn for pennies was still here, but she wasn't bowed. She was rising. The call came 2 months later. I almost didn't answer, but the screen flashed. Kevin. My son. My boy. When I picked up, all I heard was breathing, ragged and uneven. Then his voice cracked through, broken. Mom, she's gone. The story spilled out in pieces. Tiffany had emptied his accounts, sold what she could, and run off with her boss. She hadn't left a note, just a trail of debts and a hollow condo. Everything's gone, Kevin whispered. Even the paintings, even Dad's chest. A strange calm washed over me. The very things they had ripped from my house, the refrigerator, the lamp, the wedding chest, were now gone from his life too. Not stolen this time, but abandoned by the woman he had chosen over me. It was justice, brutal and poetic. A week later, Kevin appeared at Arthur's gate, his shoulders hunched, his eyes sunken. He looked like a man who had aged 20 years in 2 months. Arthur insisted I meet him. This is your story's turning point, he said softly. Kevin stood in the driveway, staring at the house with awe and something sharper, envy. He shifted when he saw me, dressed not in rags, but in dignity. Mom, he croaked, I need help. I don't have anywhere to go. Tiffany, she took it all. The boy in him surfaced then, the child who once clutched my sleeve at night, begging for comfort. My heart cracked, but it did not break. Kevin, I said, steady as stone. You chose Tiffany's voice over mine. You let her strip me of everything, and I stood in my empty house alone, Do you remember that? His chin dropped. I was wrong. I see that now. Arthur stepped forward. He didn't raise his voice, but the weight of it pressed like iron. You may stay, Kevin, but only if you respect your mother. There will be no more taking, only rebuilding. Kevin looked from Arthur to me, his lips trembling. I'll do whatever it takes. I nodded. Then start by understanding this. I am not your safety net. I am not your burden either. I am my own woman. And from this day on, I live for me. The words were heavier than any chest Tiffany could have stolen. They were my freedom. The next Sunday, Arthur hosted a garden party. Neighbors and friends filled the yard, the air buzzing with laughter and the scent of roses. I wore a pale blue dress Carol had insisted I buy, and as the music swelled, Arthur raised a glass. To second chances, he said, his eyes locked on mine. And then, for the first time in decades, I danced. Kevin stood at the edge of the garden, watching. His expression was unreadable, regret, sorrow, perhaps relief. He didn't join the dance, but he didn't leave either. He stayed, a man tethered to the truth of his choices, finally beginning to see the woman who had given him everything. Revenge, in the end, wasn't Tiffany's ruin. It wasn't even Kevin's regret. It was me, standing tall in a garden filled with music, claiming the life I had been told I no longer deserved. Because the sweetest revenge is not destruction, it is resurrection. To everyone watching this, let me ask you, if your child betrayed you this way and one day came back broken and begging, would you open your door or close it forever? Arthur proposed in the simplest way, without champagne or fireworks. He took my hands one evening in the garden, the lanterns flickering above us, and said, Eleanor, I don't want to waste another minute without calling you my wife. For a long moment, I couldn't breathe. Marriage had been something I buried in the ground decades ago, under the weight of loss and sacrifice. But as I looked at him, steady, kind, unwavering, I realized he wasn't asking to replace the life I had lived. He was offering me a future I never dared imagine. And so I said yes. The wedding wasn't grand, but it was perfect. We chose Arthur's garden, the same one where I had found my footing again. Roses climbed the trellis, the grass shone green under the afternoon sun, and Carol stood beside me, fussing with the veil she had pressed herself. Guests filled the chairs, old friends, neighbors, even some of my former clients. And at the very back, just behind the last row, Kevin stood. He hadn't dressed for a wedding. His shirt was wrinkled, his shoes scuffed, but he was there. When the music began, Arthur took my hand, and we walked together down the aisle, not as two young dreamers, but as two survivors who had found their way back to joy. During the vows, I felt Kevin's eyes on me. A flicker of shame crossed his face, but also something else, recognition. Perhaps for the first time, he saw me not as a burden or an obstacle, but as a woman with a story, a heart, and the right to happiness. After the ceremony, Kevin approached, clutching a small box. He didn't speak at first, then he opened it. Inside was the brooch Tiffany had once mocked, the one she'd tried to sell at a pawn shop. He had tracked it down, bought it back with what little he had left. I can't undo what I did, he said, his voice low. But maybe I can give back a piece. Tears burned my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. I touched his cheek just once and whispered, "The rest you'll have to rebuild yourself." He nodded, and for once, he didn't argue. That night, as Arthur and I sat side by side, I thought of the long road that had brought me here. From widowhood at 23 to decades of sacrifice, to betrayal that gutted me to the bone. And now, rebirth. I realized something important. I hadn't just found love again. I had found my voice. To the women watching this, who have given everything only to be told you're useless, hear me now. Your worth is not measured by what others take from you. It is measured by what you decide you are still capable of becoming. Sometimes the most powerful boundary you can draw is the one that says, I will live for myself. So if you are carrying a story like mine, if you've been betrayed by those you love, if you've felt erased, know this: life can still surprise you. And sometimes, losing everything is how you finally find what you truly deserve. Respect isn't given by blood. It's earned through love and kindness. And now, I leave you with this question. If you were standing where I stood, at the edge of betrayal, staring down the possibility of a new beginning, would you take that step into the unknown? Or would you cling to the ruins of the past? Share your thoughts in the comments. Share your own stories too, because here, in this space, no one suffers alone. And if this story touched you, don't forget, subscribe to Tangled Heart Stories and ring the bell, so you'll never miss another tale of sacrifice, betrayal, and the justice that comes when you least expect it. Because sometimes, justice isn't loud. Sometimes it looks like a woman dancing in her own garden, free at last.